comical part about this is actually an FBI hostage negotiation chart. This is literally one of the steps that they use to train how to talk somebody off of a ledge. And you think about the movies and all that kind of stuff, and active listening. Why are you doing this? And then obviously our end result is we want behavior change. One of the most important things that I think when it comes to changing behavior, there's 1,000 ways to do that. You have the old behaviorist psychology of Pavlov's dog. You have a reward system or a negative reward system of some sort that you're trying to cultivate a certain behavior. But what I have found is that when I decided that this was everything that I wanted to do, I would say I've been coaching for about 18 years now, and I'm coaching I started off all high school and older athletes, and then now I've gone into the club world where I deal with everybody, but I can honestly say in my 18 years of coaching, I've never had an athlete roll their eyes in disrespect and walk away from me in disgust. And that is like when you think, oh my gosh, teenage girls in high school, are you kidding me? No way. This is everything in that thing. And so this obviously develops not only into coaching better, but the culture that comes behind mutual respect when we stop skipping stairs 1 through 3. Okay? Everybody wants to influence themselves and create behavior, and as a coach, that's what you're there for. You're trying to influence these kids and you want the behavior change, but you're forgetting about these other 3. And ultimately, if we just stop worrying about the behavior change and start thinking about the active listening and stuff, and again, applying this to a regular scenario of a simple gymnastics skill to an extremely complex scenario of life issues. The moment you give the athlete the power to speak up for themselves, talk to you, bring it up, and again, talking skill or other, it'll get to the point where when you really focus on that first step of active listening, all of a sudden they're sharing their input. Once they take a turn, let's say it's something that they keep separating their legs on, you keep yelling at them, point your toes, whatever. And there's sometimes when you show them on the video and they'll be like, I didn't know I was doing that. So now we have a discussion of okay, well, I'm pointing out the problem to you and I want you to fix it. What do you feel? How do you encounter, what's going on in your mind when you do this? All of a sudden, when they start opening up and they start telling you what they feel, how they feel, their responses to certain things, all of a sudden now you have the ability to say, okay, now it's out in the open, you know about it, let's talk about how to fix it. And the moment they tell you, and again, sometimes empathy isn't always needed because if it's just fixing a small skill, it's not a long process, but when you get to that point where they start telling you what they feel, how they, again, skill, whatever, now you have the ability to have them come up with a solution with you. Now, most of you guys have actual kids of your own, and sometimes when you give them the option to say, what would you like for lunch or dinner, and they want a sprinkle and frosting sandwich. But there's that one time when they'll be like, I want a salad. And you're like, that's an amazing idea. Let's do that. And that kid thinks it's the best salad on the planet because they made that decision. And as soon as you start understanding, one, the correct way to go about it, but two, when you start giving them the ability to compromise, you don't get that eye roll, walk away, that disrespect. Anytime a kid does that, it's because they don't think it's fair, whatever you're telling them to do. Whether or not it is or isn't, doesn't matter. That's how they feel, and you're not going to change that by yelling at them or giving them more consequences. So when you recognize how they feel and you empathize with them, the moment you empathize with them, you start gaining their respect. And again, it could be the most ludicrous thing in the world when you're telling them to do something and they fight with you about it. But if you just take a step back, put yourself in their shoes, and without yelling at them, you say, well, okay, I'm telling you to do this, you don't want to do that, what's our common ground? Where can we go in between? And as soon as they mention something, they go with something, and you work with that, now you have a totally different influence and behavior change that's going to happen instantaneously the moment they open their mouth. Some kids obviously will just constantly work off of you telling them what to do, they go do that. But when there's that struggle, opening up the doors for that. So a process that starts off slow and then builds up, all of a sudden now when you have that constant feedback and the constant working together to come up, like I said, small solutions or big solutions, now you have the kid that's willing to walk to you every single time, look at you after every correction, and they start to put more trust and give you the ability to go faster through steps 1 through 3. And I think, like I said, the important part about that listening is not to diminish what they're saying. And if it's a behavioral issue, a big blow up, or anything like that, recognizing how they feel and giving them the opportunity to know that you respect them, that alone will go a million miles. And I know every single coach here has the ultra talented kid that is a complete like monster that you're just like, oh my gosh, you're around because of your talent. And then you have the kid that's the hardworking kid that takes 10 extra turns and everything, but you're like, I would take a gym full of those kids any day. And that is a total, that kid listens to and respects you and wants to work with you. And again, you're willing to listen to those kids more than the kids that give you the problems, but it's the kids that have the most problems or give you the most problems that need that step of, hold on, let me take a step back. A perfect example is Corey here. She did a little gym survey and just asked kids, like, what do you feel? What do you need? What do you want? And she took all those responses in, read them, and went, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was doing that. I can do this. And just, again, giving them a little bit of power to change, and now all of a sudden the dynamic changes drastically the moment that they think they have a part of that.
I thought you were going to see her yell at you.
You know, and like I said, when it comes to trying to think of a good example of where giving them a solution or asking them to come up with a solution. So a conditioning thing. Okay, let's do X amount of reps or whatever. They get to that point of failure, they break down, and now you can't get anything out of them. If you just take a moment to say, what's going on? How can I help you? And just look, hey, this is too hard or whatever. Okay, I'm listening to you loud and clear. What we're doing is too hard. Okay, where are we struggling in our gymnastics? Why are we doing this conditioning? And get them to talk to you, right? Have that conversation. Okay, we're struggling on bars and whatever, so why do you think I'm having you do these things? So you're trying to get your point across where you're having that conversation. If this is too hard, what can we do that you think you can do that's going to make, and again, they may end up half the time when you just stop and just let them talk, a lot of the times they'll say what you want them to say. Because they understand, oh, I'm trying to get better at this, I should probably do more of this, great, let's do that. And because they said it, it's whether you said it or they said it, you're gonna get two totally different outcomes by what happens after that point. So kind of coercing them almost, or giving them the opportunity to say what you want them to say, or just give them an opportunity to choose something that these are smart kids. And if you get to that point where you're asking them, how can we fix this, and they don't know, well, that's where your influence becomes important, because now they're looking for it. But if it's not, and they say what you want them to say, you tell them, that's an amazing idea, let's do that. And now they're all about it because they decided. They're not rolling their eyes at you because it's their decision. And working with them, and again, when you think about, like I said, hostage negotiation, talking with toddlers, like all those things, like, yeah, same exact thing. How can I get you to say what I want you to say, and then all of a sudden, the moment you say it, you're amazing, let's run with that. And then you'll notice, like on the coaching side of things, what do I always yell at you for? Pointing my toes. What can we do to fix that? Oh, maybe I could go do this side station. Awesome. So now, instead of me correcting you the next time you go, it's you did it or you didn't do it. Go do that side station. And I'm not asking you to take 10,000 extra turns or yell at you, go do 5 more routines. It's, hey, if you do me a favor and just do 10 toe pointing drills, it takes you 30 seconds. Is that too much? No? Okay. I just want you to do that once a day, or once every other turn on bars, or something where you just all of a sudden, if you do that for the first week of something, and then the next week you say, oh, you've already got that incorporated, do that plus this one extra handstand against the wall. Now all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5 weeks into the program, you have a kid that's decided all the things that they want to fix their own gymnastics, and they're doing 45 extra turns. All that takes a little bit of here and there time. And again, this is suggestions or stuff that you've communicated and worked with, and you're going to get a lot less of that, I don't want to be here because I just feel like this is their control of the program. When you think about developing them into strong, powerful, independent people, then gymnastics comes easy. If they're a good person, you like coaching them. Well, if you work on the person part, then everything after that becomes super, super, super easy. Or at least it comes less stressful, if nothing else. I mean, obviously there's still going to be physical challenges that come with it. Like I said, once this got introduced to me, I also happened to be I was at a college camp, and they had a coach who was a high school coach from Minnesota, and she literally just talked about her gym culture, and she said, I coach the person first. If they come in the gym, how is your day today? How are things going? Are you feeling good? Okay, let's move on. Today's not your day. Maybe let's take a few less turns. Let's, when you do that respect of understanding how they are that day, again, your output can be smaller, but still really quality. They're not wasting time trying things that they don't think they can do. They're spending their time on the things that they know they can do. And that quality of work comes from that respect of how's it going. Because ultimately, I would love to think that everybody that walks in my door and sees me has had a great day. But not everybody's home life is that way. You might be the only smile that kid got, the only high five, the only positive influence whatsoever. And if you throw that away just by starting off the day without respecting how they feel and how they start their day, you're gonna have a hard time getting anything out of them. So really, like I said, just that active listening. On an emotional level, you're gonna get way more respect. On a gymnastics level, you're gonna get a kid that's gonna start coaching themselves. What did you feel? I did feel my knees bent. I spent 30 seconds less trying to talk about knee bends and telling you what to do. You felt it. We already had that solution from last time. You know the side drill. Now your coaching philosophy part of it is becoming way more efficient. And you have a kid that recognizes the problems instantly and tries to solve them as fast as possible. And if a drill doesn't work, be creative, come up with another, knee tightening, toe pointing, whatever drill, until you find the stuff that has that. I went and did the drill, I took a turn, and my legs are straight. Great, well, there's your go-to for them for a while. And being efficient with that takes way less stress off of you. You have to talk less. But then, like I said, all of a sudden you start to realize how powerful and awesome these kids really are. And this is something that, even I'm talking 6-year-olds at a gym are blowing me away with their responsibility of once they have that power. And I also had the opportunity of going to an ownership conference in Las Vegas, and Cassie Rice, who, if you're familiar with Tasha Schweikart, she was in the Olympics in 2000. She was an alternate in 2004, I believe. She owns it. So Cassie Rice owns a gym in Las Vegas that has had elite national team members and all that kind of stuff. She's been coaching for 40-some years. And she has all of the accolades, and she has the resume that's amazing. And she stood up in front of probably about 150 of us gym owners that have look up to and respect her. And she said that her entire career was a failure until last year. And that's because she thought everything was based around their performance, their results. I got kids to the Olympics, those were their dreams, right? But then she realized like how torn down some of these athletes were. And yes, they wanted that. It wasn't like, she's not an abusive coach by any means. She's actually the opposite. She's an amazing, positive person. But putting those kids through that process and then having them come back to her, and so she started asking all of our former athletes, how are you as adults, and finding out this crazy amount of issues. And so she talked about it's time to stop worrying about the gymnastics and start empowering your kids. And again, like I said, it's something as simple as being tiny little coaches in the gyms, but when you teach someone that it's their destiny, their gymnastics is in their hands, and how they handle themselves and what they do every day. When you have 5 of those kids in your gym versus just 1, some of the kids that might not be the most talented all of a sudden turn into those most respectful, awesome kids. That's when you start to see that culture flip. Now you have the majority leaders and self-motivators and awesome people that you're working with coaching, and they're also working alongside each other. And that culture change makes all of the difference. And I mean, not talking about scores matter and all that. Scores do matter. I mean, these kids come in, they want that. If they come in and fail all the time, they're not always going to be super motivated to come in and do gymnastics. But there's even the weakest gymnast has a goal that isn't like, I want a 9.9. Like, everybody has those baby steps of goals. And when they start moving in the forward direction and they're the ones in control, like I said, you now have a total difference in culture change. And if they respect themselves and they respect you as a coach, you better bet that they're going to start respecting the people around them. And they're going to start doing the active listening part of those communications and those relationships a lot differently amongst each other. So I mean, without holding this chart in front of you and trying to have that conversation with the kids, it's gotten to the point where, like I said, at the gym, if a kid takes a turn, I instantly try to gun up for a correction, and I take a step back. What did you feel? And even if you give them a correction and then they go back and make an immediate change that's like, oh, that was perfect. What did you feel differently? I would say probably 8 out of 10 times those kids go, I didn't feel a single difference. You just didn't yell at me as much. Or you didn't tell me I was, I just assume it. So all of a sudden you have that, like I said, there's that time when you just, okay, what did you feel? And when you just start commanding that, like I said, that's on the physical side of gymnastics, you'll get a total change. And then on the mental side, you have that. So start paying attention to how their days are, and give them the opportunity to say, oh, you feel great today? Let's ramp it up. You don't feel great today? Let's pull it back. There's not a single person here that would argue with, hey, let's do a bunch of basics today. Basics always help. Why not do more of those? So are you wasting a day if the kid's literally like, I literally can't even hang on the bar? All right, well, let's do something different. Let's do this. Let's do, find out what works for them, and then watch, like I said, watch that production change. So I guess flipping over now to the information processing. So if you're looking over this chart, you see your sensory input. So I guess a good example that I always use when I talk to the kids, and this goes back to like the what did you feel or whatever. If they don't feel it, it's not important to them, so you're not going to get anywhere into coding that into possible muscle memory. But like, think about either a childhood home or a place that you currently live, somewhere that you've lived for 4 or 5 years or even more. And if I asked you, how many trees are on your street? You could probably like picture it in your head and start counting. It's not important to you, but the trees are there and you know that. So then when your brain literally looks at a tree, it says, instead of seeing bark and this and that, your brain goes, tree, not important, throw it out. Like it literally just in and out, all of that information came in through your sensors, and your brain has to get rid of that because that's way too much information. I know personally that, okay, well, how do we make whatever a part of that is important? How do we make that important and then start to focus on it? A good example is you're at school, or you're teaching, or you're at a conference where you meet somebody. You meet that person, you introduce yourselves, hi, how's it going? Great. You learn something new about them, awesome. And then all of a sudden, 45 minutes later, you're in the hallway and you walk past that person, you're like, hey. 2 hours later, hey. All of a sudden you see that person, you're like, I've walked past you 8 times a day for a year now, and we've never said a word to each other. We had a conversation, and now you're important to me. And now you see that, and it's how fast that it goes from sensory input to that like short term, like, oh, this is important. And when you recognize right away that that person's important, you start to work towards, getting that. So how do we translate that to gymnastics skills? And as coaches, we have to live outside of these 3 major boxes, okay? Because, so attention, like I just said, a tree, why do we need to know that's important? Or that person, why do we need to know that's important? So how do we draw the attention to the things that we want the kids to actually put inside their own boxes? And that's what we do. We usually will just say it out of our, hey, you did this or whatever. And so that attention is if we can spend all of our time getting those kids to really see that attention, now you get the opportunity to do the rehearsal. You bent your legs, I drew attention to it, you felt it, now let's work on making it straight and then encoding that into that. And that attention part of it is very different for a lot of kids. You have kids that can focus for 6.5 seconds, and then you have the kids that listen to everything you say, remember everything you say, and but understanding as a coach that that is the most important part of what we do to get what we want out of them, for them to do that muscle memory side of things. So on there, so you grab their attention, and now you're trying to rehearse it so that it stays in that box. Well, it says unrehearsed information is lost. So when you don't spend enough time paying attention to it, if you point it out once, that's not enough time. You talk about you have to do something 30 times to remember it, or something like 100 times to fix it. Think about how you draw attention to things, and going back to something that's important to a child or a teenager or anything like that. The moment that they think it's important is where you're gonna get that, okay, now they're working to put that into their long-term memory, and that goes back to the active listening. If they don't say it, they don't talk about it, they don't do it, you didn't talk to them, it's not important to them, it's gone. So really work on your ability to grab their attention, but on their terms. So now you have that double side attack of what we're doing wrong, here's what you can do to fix it. I'm taking your input on the drills and skills that we can do for that maintenance rehearsal, so that's also important to them. Now you have a way faster process of taking that information in and turning into the gymnast or the person that you want them to be. So just really thinking about trying to work both sides of this piece of paper and take that into start working with the person that is in front of you, not the gymnast in front of you. And then take that person and help them understand what's important in the gymnastics and why they're there. And like I said, it starts off where take those good people that you want a full gym of and empower them, but then work on those kids that are the problems in the gym and start giving them the ability to control what happens next. And then everything starts meeting in the middle. And not only are you coaching easier because you understand how they learn that information, because everybody's different with that, but like I said, you have way less disrespect, you have way more involvement, And you might find that you can, when someone's coaching themselves and coming up with all those things, you might find that it gives you way more time to develop that. You're less stressed, they're more happy. Now you can get into a whole nother avenue of relationship with your athlete that you couldn't do before because you were too busy butting your heads with them, or too busy trying to get them to make a correction that they don't want to do because it's not important to them. And like I said, that's the gym culture side of things, the coaching side of things, and understanding that information all goes hand in hand. And it's made a massive difference with me personally and the people I deal with day to day. And I think, like I said, give yourself the opportunity to start with that active listening, and don't disregard their feelings, even if they're ridiculous and they're the craziest things for the day. Take a moment that if you tell them, okay, I understand, let's adjust, think about how far that's going to go with those athletes. And think about the difference that you're going to get out of them. And when you do that day in and day out, you're going to get to the point where that level of respect is so high between you that they now trust you on everything. They will listen to what you say, and you now have influence and behavior change happening way faster on both physical and emotional sense of the gym. So that's about all I got on the actual verbiage. If you guys have any questions or anything like that.
So on our JV team last year, we had probably 4 girls quit by the end of the season. Do you have any tips on just building the culture from the beginning on just general commitment? Because it was for a variety of reasons. Some of our students take 7 AP classes and they just don't have time. Some of them just wanted to go to sleepovers with their friends instead. And I don't know, maybe it's not something that just give us a strategy, but
Just flat out, when it comes down to it, is they're quitting for those reasons. So in the case of the kids taking the AP tests or being in those advanced classes, they don't have time for gymnastics. So how can you make it so that they can do both? How can you be efficient so that they can take the time? Do they need to be there for all 3.5 hours of the practice? I mean, hey, I understand that you are different and you are doing this. I want to keep you involved in the sport because I think it's important. You're not doing all 4 events, or how can we give you assignments once a week where you can go home early to do more, try thinking about, again, from their shoes. They're quitting because they don't have time. Well, how can you help them manage their time better so that they're willing to say, I love what I do here, but I don't have time for it. So how can I get, so can you come up with a schedule that works for them, that also gets a good output from them, that is fair? That's a possibility. What was one of the other things that you had said?
just disinterest, I don't know, just nice girls, but just didn't seem to
They're we didn't come to practice on whatever day, or we're late for the bus to meet because we were at a sleepover the day before the week. Or they missed the bus going to the conference meet even, and technically on our end that would be they should be complaining who missed the bus going to the conference meet. But it's even things like that where is that something that is at that point for us it's well, is that really more so their accountability versus ours when their priorities are just not there?
Yeah, and I'm 100%. I see that, and it's again, I talk about gym culture. I mean, my culture's not perfect by any means, but they missed the bus. That was the last thing that happened. Where did that disinterest start? When did it stop? When was it not important to them to put in that time? And that's where if you come back to the first day of the gym, hey, I'm willing to work with you and make your lives here awesome and fun, and let's be there for each other. And all of a sudden, when you have that to start, where I want to be here and I love it here, not to say that you ran a program that they didn't love or whatever, but just if you grab their attention to want to take in that information from the beginning, they won't miss that bus in the end. Everybody makes mistakes, and again, it's that active listening of what happened. Was it just this moment, or is this something that's been happening the whole time? And how can we start off with building that? Okay, you're here now. Let's make this what you want it to be. If it really was up to us, then all of the best gymnasts and all of the Olympians would come from the same exact minds. but they don't. Those Olympians come from all over the country, and they come from all different gyms because it's the kid that's the important part. And when you recognize that and cultivate the program around that person individually, you might have a different response to bus at the end of the year. You know? Well, thanks for hanging out and listening. Like I said, Carlos has my information. If you guys ever want to reach out, email, whatever, I'm an open book. Appreciate it.